Some betrayals start as whispers, small, almost invisible cracks in the foundation of a life built on trust. Welcome back to Wives Gone Wild. Thanks for joining us today. Where are you tuning in from? We love knowing where these wild tales reach you. Let's dive into today's story. I'm Jerry Adams, and I believed I had it all. A marriage built on respect, decades of shared memories, and a future that seemed secure. But sometimes, what feels unshakable is just waiting for the right storm to tear it apart. From the outside, my life looked picture perfect. I had spent years crafting a stable career and nurturing a family I was proud of. My wife, Betsy, and I had been together for nearly 3 decades, building a home that felt safe, predictable, and steady. We had met in college, two young dreamers full of ambition, not drawn together by an explosive passion, but by something even more valuable: deep mutual respect. Falling into step with each other felt natural, effortless. We married soon after graduation, not out of urgency, but out of certainty. Betsy was my partner, my equal. We weren't just lovers, we were a team. And when our daughter, Amy, came into the world, she became the heartbeat of our lives. She was bright, full of life, and everything we did seemed to revolve around giving her the best future possible. Our careers flourished side by side. Betsy, with her unwavering dedication to education, became a respected teacher. I carved out my own success in finance, overseeing budgets and compliance for a company that specialized in government contracts. We had found that rare balance: financial security without the chaos, independence without growing apart. Years passed, and we settled into the kind of rhythm most couples dream of: busy weekdays, occasional vacations, and weekends filled with laughter, dinner parties, and watching Amy grow into a woman we were incredibly proud of. Eventually, she married a good man named Jim and started a family of her own. And just like that, the house that once echoed with Amy's laughter became quieter. I thought this was our moment to rekindle what we once had. With Amy off building her own life, I imagined Betsy and I rediscovering each other, going on spontaneous trips, sharing slow mornings over coffee, finding new ways to fall in love again. But looking back, I realize now there were signs. Subtle, creeping signs that something was shifting between us. At first, it was barely noticeable. The way conversations grew shorter, how she seemed preoccupied even when we were together. I chalked it up to the natural ebb and flow of a long marriage. After all, decades together meant there would be lulls, right? But in reality, the cracks had already formed. I just wasn't paying attention. And soon enough, those small fractures would grow into something impossible to ignore. For most of my life, I took pride in what Betsy and I had built. 3 decades of marriage, a beautiful daughter, a stable life. These were things I had never taken for granted. I thought we were content. But contentment can be deceiving. It can mask the slow unraveling of something you once thought was unbreakable. It started small. So small that I didn't even realize it at first. Amy had moved out years ago, settling into a life of her own with her husband, Jim. And while I missed her, I saw this new chapter as a chance for Betsy and me to reconnect. No more late-night school projects, no more rushing to soccer games or PTA meetings. Just the two of us, free to rediscover the people we were before we became parents. But reality didn't unfold the way I imagined. At first, there were the little things: missed conversations, moments of silence that stretched longer than they used to. I would look up from my morning coffee to find Betsy scrolling through her phone, lost in thought. Our dinners, once filled with stories about our day, became routine exchanges of "How was work?" and "Did you hear from Amy today?" I told myself it was just the adjustment period, that after years of having Amy in the house, we were simply learning how to be a couple again. But in the back of my mind, there was a nagging feeling, a quiet voice whispering that something wasn't quite right. Betsy had always had a small group of close girlfriends, women she'd known since her early teaching days. They'd get together once a month for dinner, sometimes at a restaurant, sometimes at one of their homes. I never minded. In fact, I encouraged it. We both deserved time with our friends, and Betsy wasn't the kind of woman to stay out late or drink heavily. At least, she hadn't been. It wasn't just the frequency of their gatherings that changed, it was the way she talked about them. Or rather, the way she didn't talk about them. She would come home later than usual, her laughter lingering just a little too long when she recalled their conversations. One night, As we were getting ready for bed, I casually asked, "So, what did you and the girls talk about tonight?" Betsy paused, just for a fraction of a second, before replying, "Oh, just catching up. Stephanie was telling us about her latest disaster at work. You remember how she always gets herself into some kind of drama?" I nodded, forcing a smile. I wanted to believe her. Maybe I did believe her. But something about the way she brushed it off left me unsettled. And then, there were the text messages. Betsy had never been secretive about her phone. She would leave it lying on the counter, unlocked, as she moved around the house. But lately, I had noticed a shift. She kept it closer, picked it up quickly when a message came in. Sometimes, I'd catch her smirking at the screen, fingers typing quickly before she locked it and set it down. Once, as I walked into the kitchen, she startled and flipped her phone over. It was a reflex, one she tried to mask by reaching for her coffee like nothing had happened. "Everything okay?" I asked. She glanced up, feigning innocence. "Oh yeah, just Stephanie being ridiculous again." I laughed along with her, pretending I wasn't analyzing every micro-expression on her face, pretending I didn't feel the first tendrils of doubt wrap around my mind. It was easy to dismiss these things in isolation. A missed conversation, a late night out, a text message she didn't want me to see. But when you start stacking them together, they begin to paint a different picture. And deep down, I was starting to realize I might not like what that picture was becoming. It was a Friday night, the kind of evening that should have been quiet, uneventful. I had just finished a late lunch with my friend Harold, a routine we had whenever our wives met up for their monthly girls' night. It was something of an unspoken tradition. Harold and I would grab a meal, talk about work, maybe catch a game on TV, and then head home to our respective wives. But this time, something pulled me in a different direction. As I drove toward our neighborhood, I noticed a few extra cars parked near our house. That wasn't unusual. Betsy often hosted her friends, but tonight, instead of pulling into the driveway, I found myself slowing down. Curiosity, instinct, or maybe just something I wasn't ready to name yet. I parked around the corner and walked toward the house, taking the side entrance that led to our back porch. That's when I heard it. Laughter. Loud, uninhibited. The sound of women lost in their own world, their own secrets. I should have walked inside, kissed my wife on the cheek, and greeted her friends like I always did. But something made me stop. Some unseen force kept my feet rooted in place as I hovered just outside, listening. And then, I heard Stephanie's voice, clear, sharp, laced with amusement. "I love my husband, but let's be honest, he's old, overweight, and can barely stand up sometimes. I mean, I need a little love, so I rely on a good personal stimulator instead." A chorus of laughter followed. Someone gasped, another voice chimed in. "Stephanie, stop. You can't just say that about Sam." But Stephanie only laughed harder. "Why not? The man lasts about a minute. I've started calling him Minute Man." More laughter, more jokes. And then Maggie spoke up. "Well, if we're being honest, Harold's a different story. He's definitely interested in sex. But let's just say, he's not exactly working with much. I can barely feel anything. And after 3 kids, I kind of need more." The room erupted again. Someone asked, "How big is it?" Maggie giggled. "Maybe around 4 inches. Stephanie practically shrieked with laughter. "No, no. I mean, how hard and big is he?" "Oh, he's hard," Maggie admitted. "But we might as well call him teeny weeny." I felt my stomach twist. I had known these women for years. Sat beside them at barbecues. Helped them move furniture. Laughed with their husbands over beers. And now, I was standing outside my own home, listening to them tear their partners apart like they were nothing more than jokes over a bottle of wine. But I hadn't heard Betsy's voice yet. And for a moment, I allowed myself to believe maybe she wasn't like them. Maybe she had enough respect for me to stay silent. Then Erica spoke. "My husband, Ollie, still has the drive of a 20-year-old. But me? I'm going through menopause, and I honestly couldn't care less. So sometimes, when he begs, I just let him take care of himself in front of me." Laughter. "He actually enjoys that?" someone asked. "Oh yeah," Erica smirked. "I like to tease him. Make him feel like an awkward teenager again. I call him Blue Ball Boy." Another explosion of laughter. And then, the words that shattered everything. Stephanie's voice, playful but edged with something cruel. "All right, Betsy, your turn. What do you call Jerry?" My breath caught. A pause. A giggle. And then, "Boner boy." The room howled. The laughter came in waves, a collective release of amusement at my expense. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. For nearly 3 decades, I had been nothing but a loyal husband. I had never belittled Betsy, never spoken about her with anything less than respect. And here she was, laughing along as my name was tossed around like a joke. I had never been a man quick to anger. I had always been measured, rational. But in that moment, standing outside my own home, hearing my wife mock me in a room full of women, something inside me snapped. Stephanie's voice rang out again, oblivious to the storm brewing just outside. "We're just as bad as the guys. Let's go check out that new club and let some young men dance with us. If our husbands aren't keeping up, we might as well let those boys have a little fun." The agreement came swiftly. Cheers, clinking glasses, excitement humming through their voices. And suddenly, everything made sense. The late nights, the text messages, the laughter she wouldn't explain. This wasn't just girl talk. This wasn't just wine-fueled nonsense. This was disrespect. This was betrayal. I turned away, my hands clenched into fists, my heart pounding with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Betsy had no idea that I was standing there. No idea that I had heard everything. But she would. And when she did, she wouldn't be laughing anymore. I walked away from that porch a different man. I should have stormed inside, confronted Betsy right then and there. Let them all see the fire they had ignited. But I didn't. Instead, I slipped away, got in my car, and drove. Not home. Not anywhere, really. Just away. The night blurred past as I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white with restraint. Their laughter still rang in my ears, sharp and mocking, slicing through every memory I had ever cherished with Betsy. I had always believed that if betrayal ever found its way into my marriage, it would be something obvious, a discovered text message, a missed call at the wrong hour, a whispered name that wasn't mine. But this was a different kind of betrayal, a slow, creeping corrosion of respect, and I had been blind to it. I parked at a nearby overlook, staring into the darkness, my mind replaying every moment from the past few years. The missed conversations, the subtle shifts in Betsy's behavior, the way she had started holding her phone just a little closer. It had all been leading to this. How long had this been going on? Had every night out with her friends been filled with the same kind of ridicule? The same reckless jokes about the men who loved them, provided for them, remained loyal to them? A cold realization settled in. I had no idea who my wife really was anymore. By the time I got home, the house was quiet. Betsy had cleaned up from the gathering, like any other night. Like she hadn't spent the evening tearing apart the man who had built a life with her. She turned to me as I walked in, her face lighting up. "Hey, honey, how was your night?" I stared at her, searching for something, guilt, hesitation, anything that might betray what she had done. But there was nothing, just warmth, familiarity. The ease of a woman who had no idea she had just rewritten our entire marriage with a few careless words. "Fine," I muttered. "Long day. I'm heading to bed." Betsy frowned. "Are you sure? You look upset." I forced a nod, unwilling to let her see the storm raging inside me. "Just tired." She stepped closer, reaching out to touch my arm, but I pulled away, just enough for her to notice, just enough to make her hesitate. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt her slide in beside me, her body curling against mine like it always did. But I didn't move. I stayed still, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of her presence in a way I never had before. The woman beside me, the one I had trusted for nearly 30 years, had sat in a room full of people and laughed at me, reduced me to a punchline. And now, she slept soundly, oblivious to the war she had started. Morning came, but the doubt remained. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them by pretending nothing had changed. Over breakfast, Betsy hummed to herself as she made coffee, the picture of a content wife. The sight of her, so normal, so unbothered, sent another wave of anger through me. She turned to me, smiling. "I'm going shopping with Amy today. She wants to look at maternity clothes. Do you need anything while I'm out?" I shook my head, barely hearing her. I had already made my decision. The moment she left, I walked straight to her phone. For years, we had never kept passwords from each other. There had been no need. But as I picked up her phone and pressed the button, my stomach sank. It was locked. I tried a few common passwords. Nothing. She had never locked her phone before. And that told me everything I needed to know. Doubt was no longer a whisper in my mind. It was a certainty. Something was very wrong. and I was going to find out exactly what it was. Betsy had never locked her phone before. That single, undeniable truth sat heavy in my chest as I stared at the screen. It was a small change, something most people wouldn't think twice about. But after what I had overheard the night before, it was a flashing red warning sign. She was hiding something. I placed the phone back on the counter exactly as I had found it. I wasn't about to tip my hand. Not yet. If there was something to find, I needed to be smarter about how I went looking for it. Instead, I spent the day playing the role of the unbothered husband. I responded to Betsy's texts with short, neutral replies. I went about my usual weekend routine, even went for a longer than usual bike ride just to clear my head. But the entire time, my mind was spinning. I had to know. That night, when Betsy finally went to sleep, I slipped out of bed as quietly as I could. Her phone sat on the nightstand, just within reach. I picked it up carefully, my heartbeat thrumming in my ears. Another locked screen. I tried a few more passcodes. Our anniversary, Amy's birthday, even some old PIN numbers I remembered from years ago. Nothing worked. Frustrated, I set it down. I needed another approach. And then it hit me. Her laptop. Betsy rarely used it for anything but emails and browsing, and unlike her phone, I knew for a fact that she never logged out of her accounts. I sat down at her desk, opened the lid, and watched as the screen came to life. No password prompt. She hadn't even thought to secure it. The moment I clicked into her email, my stomach tightened. Dozens of messages. Some from work, some from Amy, the usual newsletters and spam. But as I scrolled further, something caught my eye. A long thread between Betsy and Stephanie. I clicked, and within seconds, the truth began to unfold. Stephanie, as I had already suspected, was the ringleader. The one who pushed the boundaries, who planted the ideas in their heads. But what I wasn't prepared for was how easily Betsy had followed along. Stephanie, this weekend is going to be insane. No husbands, no responsibilities, just fun. Betsy, I can't wait. We need this. My stomach clenched. They were planning a trip. A weekend away. But what kind of fun were they expecting? I scrolled further. Teresa. Okay, but what exactly did you set up, Steph? I need details before I agree to this. Stephanie. Relax, Teresa. It's just a little entertainment. And maybe some of us will get a bit extra if we want it. No pressure, of course. But trust me, it'll be worth it. Betsy. OMG, you're terrible. But honestly, we deserve a little something after all these years. The words blurred. My pulse roared in my ears. Entertainment. Extra. They weren't just going on a getaway. They were planning something more. I kept reading, scanning every message, trying to piece together what exactly Betsy and her friends had gotten themselves into. And then I saw it. The final message before the conversation shifted to mundane packing details. Stephanie, tell Boner Boy he better be nice to you after this weekend, or you might not need him anymore. My breath hitched. And there it was. The confirmation. This wasn't just a girl's trip. This was a betrayal, waiting to happen. I leaned back in the chair, exhaling slowly, trying to process what I had just read. Betsy had a choice. She could have shut it down. She could have said, no, this isn't right. I have a husband who loves me. Instead, she laughed along. Encouraged it. I closed the laptop, my hands trembling with anger. This wasn't just about the past anymore. It wasn't about the laughter I had overheard, the disrespect, or the growing distance between us. This was about the future. And the question that haunted me now wasn't what has she done? It was what is she about to do? I wasn't going to wait to find out. I was going to put an end to it before it even started. Betsy had no idea what was coming. She moved through the house that morning like any other day, sipping her coffee, scrolling on her phone, humming under her breath. But I saw her differently now. I wasn't looking at my wife. I was looking at a stranger. The messages I had read the night before played on repeat in my head. Entertainment. Extra. We deserve this. She had already crossed a line. Maybe she hadn't physically done anything yet, but in her mind, she was gone. And that realization hit harder than I expected. I sat at the kitchen table, watching her, waiting for the right moment. You've been quiet, she said, finally looking up. Something wrong. I studied her, trying to decide if I should lay it all out now. But no, this wasn't the time. Not yet. Just thinking about work, I lied. She smiled, relieved. Well, don't overwork yourself. You've been tense lately. Tense. I nearly laughed. If only you knew. I let the moment pass, but inside, I was already planning my next move. She was scheduled to leave Friday morning. They had the entire trip mapped out. 4 days at Stephanie's lake house, away from their husbands, away from responsibility. But they weren't going for fresh air and wine nights. They were going for something else. And I wasn't about to let it happen. That afternoon, I reached out to the only people who would understand: Stephanie's husband, Sam, and 2 other husbands, Harold and Ollie. I wasn't subtle. I told them everything. At first, there was hesitation, disbelief. No one wanted to believe that their wife, the woman they had trusted for decades, was capable of something like this. But then I showed them the messages. The proof. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Harold clenched his jaw. So you're telling me my wife sits around laughing at me? Trashing me to her friends? And now she's planning to what? Cheat. Ollie rubbed a hand over his face. Erica told me this was just a girls' weekend. Nothing crazy. I believed her. Sam, on the other hand, had nothing to say. His face was stone, his fists clenched on the table. I let them sit with it for a moment before speaking again. I don't know how far they've gone before, but I know what they're planning now. We can let them go and deal with the aftermath, or we can stop them before they make a mistake they can't take back. Another heavy silence. Then Sam nodded. I want to see it for myself. I want to hear it from her. Harold exhaled slowly. So what's the plan? I already had it figured out. Betsy and the others were set to leave Friday morning, bright and early. We wouldn't stop them. We'd let them think everything was normal. But we'd be right behind them. We'd show up at that lake house before their entertainment arrived. Before anything could happen. Before they had a chance to cover their tracks. Let them walk straight into their own disaster. Let them see our faces when they realized they had been caught. The plan was set. Now, all I had to do was wait. That evening, Betsy came home late. Her excuse was the same as always: shopping with Amy, errands, lost track of time. I pretended not to care. I played my role perfectly, even kissed her on the cheek as she walked past. Long day, I asked, testing her. She smiled, casual, unbothered. Yeah, just busy, you know how it is. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. She had no idea. No idea that her husband wasn't the fool she thought he was. No idea that in less than 48 hours, her perfect little trip would come crashing down around her. For nearly 30 years, I had trusted this woman with everything. Now, I was about to show her just how much that trust had cost me. Betsy left early Friday morning, just like she said she would. She kissed me goodbye, a soft, almost absent-minded peck on the cheek, then grabbed her bag and walked out the door with a smile. Like she wasn't walking straight into a disaster. Like she wasn't leaving behind the man who had spent 3 decades building a life with her, only to have it torn apart by secrets and whispers. I stood by the window, watching her car disappear down the street. She had no idea what was coming. By the time she and the others reached the lake house, we were already on the road, following at a distance. Sam, Ollie, Harold, and I had agreed. No confrontation, no blowing up the plan too soon. We needed to see it unfold, to hear it with our own ears, to know without a doubt what our wives had planned for the weekend. By late afternoon, we arrived at a small clearing just up the road from the lake house. We parked out of sight, staying low. The house itself sat on a gentle slope overlooking the water, secluded, private, perfect for a weekend of whatever the hell they thought they were getting away with. From our vantage point, we could see the back deck. For women, our wives, drinking, laughing, toasting to their freedom. They looked happy, relaxed, like nothing they were doing was wrong. I clenched my fists, fighting the heat rising in my chest. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Teresa. They're getting ready for their entertainment. Should be here in an hour. This was it. We gave it time, let the evening settle in. Then, as the sun dipped low and the lake reflected the fading light, we moved. Sam was the first to the door. He pushed it open without knocking. Silence. The laughter stopped instantly. 4 faces turned toward us, their eyes wide, wine glasses halfway to their lips. Stephanie was the first to recover. What the hell are you doing here? She snapped, standing up, her bravado kicking in. Sam smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Oh, we just thought we'd drop by. You know, see what our loving wives are up to. Betsy was frozen. Maggie looked like she was about to be sick. Erica and Stephanie exchanged nervous glances. I stepped forward, my eyes locked on Betsy. Go on, honey. Tell them what's wrong. You've always got plenty to say when I'm not around. Betsy swallowed hard. Jerry, it's not what you think. I let out a humorless laugh. Oh, I know exactly what this is. I turned to the others. What do you think, guys? Should we read them some of their own messages? Maybe the part where they were so excited about what was coming. Harold's voice was sharp. Or how about the part where they trashed us? Called us pathetic, embarrassing? He turned to Maggie, his voice shaking. Teeny weeny, huh? That's what you think of me. Maggie's face crumbled. Harold, he held up a hand. Don't. Ollie shook his head, his eyes locked on Erica. You called me Blue Ball Boy. His voice was raw. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is? The silence was suffocating. Then Stephanie, in true form, rolled her eyes. Oh, come on. It was jokes. We were just blowing off steam. No one actually meant anything by it. Sam took a step toward her, his expression unreadable. Really? So you mean to tell me that the pole dancer you hired for the night was a joke too? A flicker of panic crossed Stephanie's face. And there it was. Proof. I turned back to Betsy, my voice calm. Even. You could have stopped this. You could have told them it was wrong. But you didn't. Tears welled in her eyes. Jerry, I never planned to do anything. It was just what? I snapped. Just laughing while your friends humiliated their husbands? Just going along with it while you planned a weekend with built-in excuses? Just seeing how far it could go before you had to feel guilty about it. Betsy's lower lip trembled. I made a mistake. I let out a slow breath, my voice steady but cold. Yeah, you did. At that moment, headlights flickered through the trees. The entertainment had arrived. Sam turned to Stephanie. You tell him to leave, or I will. She hesitated. For a moment, I saw the wheels turning in her head, trying to find a way out, a way to twist this in her favor. But she saw the look on Sam's face. She pulled out her phone, her fingers shaking as she typed. Seconds later, the headlights backed away, disappearing down the road. And just like that, the weekend was over before it had even begun. I turned toward the door. I'm done here. Betsy reached for me, her voice desperate. Jerry, please. I stepped back. No, you don't get to plead innocence. You chose this. The other husbands followed, leaving their wives in stunned silence. As I walked out of that house, I felt something shift inside me. I had spent years believing in the woman I thought Betsy was. But tonight, I saw her for who she really was. And I didn't know if I could ever look at her the same way again. We left them there, standing in the wreckage of their own choices. The drive back was quiet. No one spoke, no one needed to. What could we even say? The damage had been done, and there was no taking it back. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my mind replaying the moment Betsy reached for me, her voice shaking with desperation. Jerry, please. I had always believed that love, real love, could withstand anything. That if two people had built something strong enough, they could weather any storm. But now I wasn't sure. Because love wasn't just words. It wasn't just history or comfort. It was respect. And tonight, I had lost all respect for my wife. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the house felt different, emptier, colder. I stepped inside and let the silence wrap around me, realizing that for the first time in almost 3 decades, I wasn't sure if I wanted Betsy to come back. I poured myself a drink and sat in the dark, staring at nothing, my mind racing. She would try to explain. She would try to twist this into something smaller, something easier to swallow. It was just a joke, Jerry. Just a night out. I never planned to do anything. But I had seen the messages. I had heard her laughter. She had already crossed the line. And she had done it without a second thought. Betsy came home the next evening. I heard her car pull up, the hesitant sound of her footsteps on the porch. A deep breath. The door opened, and she stepped inside. I didn't look up. I just kept staring at my glass, the ice melting slowly, pooling at the bottom. Jerry, she said softly, can we talk? I let the silence stretch long enough for her to shift uncomfortably. Then, finally, I spoke. Talk. She let out a shaky breath, stepping closer. I'm sorry. For everything. For the way I talked about you. For letting it go too far. I nodded, swirling the glass in my hand. You're sorry because you got caught. No, she shook her head quickly. I mean, yes, that too. But I swear, Jerry, I never meant to hurt you. I let out a slow, humorless laugh. You never meant to, huh? So tell me, Betsy, at what point were you going to stop? Before the drinks? Before the pole dancer? Or were you just going to see how far you could go before it felt like cheating? Tears welled in her eyes. I don't know. I finally looked at her then, really looked at her. The woman I had spent my life with. The woman I had once trusted beyond a shadow of a doubt. And I felt nothing. Not anger, not pain. Just emptiness. You didn't know. I nodded, setting my drink down. That's the problem, Betsy. You didn't even think about what this would do to me. To us. Because deep down, you didn't think it mattered. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away before she could touch me. I love you, Jerry. Her voice cracked. I don't want to lose you. I exhaled slowly. You already did. A sob broke from her lips, but I stood up before she could fall into my arms the way she always had, the way she had counted on being able to. I'm staying in Amy's old room for now, I said simply. I need space. Her face crumbled, but I didn't stay to watch. I walked upstairs, closed the door behind me, and locked it. For the first time in my marriage, I wasn't sure if there was anything left to save. The days that followed were strange. Betsy tried. She made my favorite meals, filled the house with warmth, acted as if she could erase what had happened by pretending we were fine. But I wasn't fine. I was tired. Tired of wondering if the woman I loved had ever truly respected me. Tired of replaying every moment, every decision, trying to find the point where I had lost her. Tired of feeling like a fool. Amy called me that week, sensing something was wrong. Dad, she asked gently, is everything okay? I swallowed hard, gripping the phone. Not really. A pause. Then, carefully, is it about Mom? I closed my eyes. Yeah. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, with a sadness in her voice, she asked, did she cheat? That was the part that haunted me most. No, she hadn't crossed that final line. But she had entertained the idea. She had walked straight up to it, danced around it, flirted with it. Was that any better? Or was it worse? She hurt me. I finally admitted. A lot. Amy exhaled. I'm so sorry, Dad. And for the first time in days, I let myself feel it. The ache, the loss, the weight of knowing that the person I had spent my life with had chosen to risk it all. The silence stretched. Then, softly, Amy asked, what are you going to do? I looked around the house, the life I had built, the memories that suddenly felt tainted. I don't know, I admitted. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if I even wanted to find the answer. The days that followed felt like moving through fog. Slow, heavy, directionless. Betsy tried. Oh, she tried. She made my favorite meals, left little notes on my nightstand like she used to when we were young. She lingered when she spoke to me, her eyes searching mine for something. Anything. That told her I was still hers. But I wasn't. Not in the way I had been before. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the realization that, for her, this had never been that serious. Just a joke, just some fun, just something to do. Meanwhile, I had spent years believing we were solid, that she saw me the way I had always seen her, that she respected me. And now, I wasn't sure if I even wanted to save this marriage. One evening, she stood in the doorway of Amy's old room, watching me. Jerry, she said softly, please, can we just talk? I sighed, closing the book I had been pretending to read. Go ahead. She hesitated, like she wasn't sure where to start. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, I know I hurt you. I leaned back, studying her. Yeah, you did. She swallowed hard. I never planned for it to go that far. I let out a humorless laugh. You mean, you never got the chance for it to go that far? Her face fell. I shook my head, exhaling slowly. Betsy, if we hadn't shown up that night, what would have happened? Be honest. She opened her mouth, closed it, and there it was. I nodded, looking away. That's what I thought. Tears welled in her eyes. Jerry, I was stupid. I got caught up in something I should have shut down. But I love you. I don't want to lose you. I met her gaze, searching for something real in her words. You don't want to lose me, or you don't want to lose the life we built? Her breath hitched. I saw it then, that flicker of fear, of realization. The weight of what she had nearly thrown away settling into her chest. She hadn't fully processed it before, but she was processing it now. I don't know how to fix this, she admitted, voice shaking. But I want to. Please, Jerry, tell me what to do. I studied her for a long time, weighing the words that sat heavy on my tongue. Counseling, I said finally. For both of us. Separately and together. She nodded so quickly it was almost desperate. Yes, of course. And it's not a guarantee, I added. I don't know if we can come back from this. But if you want a chance, that's where it starts. Tears spilled over. She wiped them away, nodding. I'll do whatever it takes, she whispered. I wanted to believe her. But trust wasn't built on words. It was built on actions. And this time, she was going to have to prove it. Counseling wasn't easy. At first, the sessions felt like nothing but reopening wounds that hadn't even started to heal. I sat in that chair, arms crossed, jaw tight, as Betsy laid out her regrets. And I realized something that both infuriated and saddened me. She had never truly understood how much this had damaged me. She had spent years believing I would always be there, that my love for her was unshakable. She never once considered that respect was the foundation of that love, and that once you shattered respect, love didn't stand much of a chance. I told her everything. How it felt to stand outside that window, hearing her laughter. How humiliating it was to know she had sat there with her friends, tearing me down. How much it gutted me to realize she had been excited for that weekend. She cried. A lot. But I didn't comfort her. Because this wasn't about her pain. This was about mine. And for once, she needed to sit with that. The therapist helped. She forced us into uncomfortable truths. Forced Betsy to face the reality of what she had done. And slowly, I started to see a shift. She wasn't just saying the right things anymore. She was doing them. She cut off Stephanie. Stopped responding to the toxic group chats. Stopped making excuses. She started treating me the way I had always treated her. With care. With effort. With respect. And over time, something strange happened. I started to see her again. Not as the woman who betrayed me, but as the woman who was trying to be better. The question was, would it be enough? Months passed. Life continued. The other marriages involved in the fallout took different paths. Harold and Maggie stayed together. Maggie had been the first to break, to apologize, to truly mean it. Their marriage wasn't perfect, but it was healing. Ollie and Erica weren't so lucky. He filed for divorce within a month, unwilling to even try rebuilding what she had broken. And Sam walked away from Stephanie without looking back. She moved out of state, chasing whatever she had thought she was missing. As for me and Betsy, we were still standing. Not the same as before. Not fixed, but standing. One night, months after everything, we sat on the porch, watching the sun set. She reached for my hand, hesitant, unsure if she had earned that right. I let her take it. She turned to me, her eyes searching mine. Are we going to be okay? I thought about it. About everything we had been through. About the woman beside me. The one who had broken me, and the one who had spent the last several months trying to put me back together. And for the first time, I gave her the most honest answer I could. I don't know. She nodded, gripping my hand tighter. And maybe that was okay. Some wounds never fully heal. Some betrayals leave scars that don't fade. But maybe, just maybe, scars weren't always the end of the story. Maybe they were just proof that we survived. Healing doesn't happen all at once. There's no single moment where everything clicks into place. No grand realization that suddenly makes the pain disappear. It happens in fragments, small, almost imperceptible shifts in the way you think, the way you feel, the way you see the person who hurt you. And some days, you wake up believing in the possibility of forgiveness. Other days, you wonder if you're making the biggest mistake of your life. That was the reality of my marriage now. Betsy and I still shared a home, still went through the routines of life together. But everything was different. Some days, we felt like a couple again, laughing over dinner, sharing stories about Amy and the baby, enjoying the little things we used to take for granted. Other days, the weight of what had happened pressed down between us, a silent reminder of how easily she had tossed away my trust. She was still trying. I could see it. She went to therapy, even when I wasn't there. She cut ties with the women who had enabled her worst instincts. She put in the work, not just to fix our marriage, but to fix herself. And for the first time in a long time, I saw a version of her that reminded me of the woman I had fallen in love with all those years ago. But love and respect weren't the same thing. I still wasn't sure if I would ever look at her the same way again. As the months passed, I started to focus on myself more. I went to the gym regularly, something I had always told myself I'd get around to but never did. I reconnected with old friends. I found joy in simple things, long bike rides, quiet mornings with my granddaughter, evenings spent talking with Amy about life. And for the first time in years, I wasn't just Jerry the husband. I was Jerry the man. The man who had spent his life devoted to his family, but had forgotten to take care of himself. The man who had once believed that if you gave someone your heart, they'd never take it for granted. The man who had learned, the hard way, that even the strongest love could be tested. And through it all, Betsy watched. She saw the changes in me. Saw the way I was evolving into someone she'd barely recognized. Someone more confident, more sure of himself. Someone who no longer felt obligated to stay just because of history. And maybe that scared her, because for the first time, she wasn't sure if she still had me. One evening, as I was getting ready for bed, she hesitated in the doorway. "Jerry." I glanced up. "Yeah." She shifted nervously. I wanted to tell you that I see it. The way you've changed. The way you've been taking care of yourself. And I just want you to know that I love you." I studied her for a moment, searching her face for the woman I had spent my life with. The woman who had broken me, yes, but also the woman who had spent the last several months trying to prove she was more than her worst mistake. Finally, I nodded. "I know. It wasn't an I love you too, because I wasn't sure if I did. Not yet, but it was honest. And right now, honesty was the only thing I could give her. I wish I could tell you there was a perfect ending to this story. That Betsy and I rebuilt everything. That trust magically returned. That love erased the scars of betrayal. But that's not how real life works. The truth is, we're still figuring it out. Some days, I look at her and feel a flicker of the love I once knew, strong and unwavering. Other days, I look at her and remember the sound of her laughter echoing from that porch, and my stomach twists all over again. But here's what I do know. I'm not the same man I was before. And that's a good thing, because now I know my worth. I know what I deserve. And I know that if this marriage is going to survive, it won't be because of guilt or history or obligation. It will be because I choose it, because she earns it every single day. And if she doesn't, then I'll walk away, not as a broken man, but as a man who finally understands that his happiness matters too. Life is messy. Relationships are complicated. People make mistakes, some that can be forgiven, and some that change everything forever. For me, this wasn't just about a broken marriage. It was about learning to put myself first, to never settle for less than I deserve, to understand that love, no matter how deep, should never come at the cost of self-respect. And if there's one thing I hope you take away from my story, it's this. Sometimes, the best thing you can do for yourself is to walk away. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is to give someone the chance to prove they're worth staying for. Only time will tell which path I'll choose. But whatever happens next, it'll be my choice. What about you? Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between walking away and staying? Share your story in the comments. Let's talk about it. And if you want more raw, untamed stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. Because here at Wives Gone Wild, we don't hold back.